City.
Slams into the area. Live team coverage coming up.
I'm John Bolaris. Earthwatch continues to track the storm moving up the coast with the worst yet to come. I'll have the details.
I'm Larry Menti, also ahead.
I recognize that I had to do the right thing.
Louis Capano speaks out in public for the first time since his brother's arrest for murder.
I'm By Sikahema. Casey Martin is not the only pro golfer who's battling an ailment. We'll introduce you to Terry Joe Myers, voted by the Philadelphia Sports Writers Association as the most courageous athlete. Find out why.
Plus in Health Watch, when a sore throat means it's time to see a doctor fast.
News 10 First at 4 starts right now.
You're watching
Philadelphia's NBC10, serving Pennsylvania,
New Jersey,
and Delaware.
Now live, this is News 10
First at 4.
The Jersey Shore is bracing for fierce winds, extra high tides, and heavy surf as another nor'easter is set to strike. Good afternoon, I'm Larry Menti.
And I'm Renee Chenault. Our top story on News 10 First at 4, a nor'easter barrels down on the Jersey Shore. It's the second big storm to hit the area in a week, and people there are bracing for the worst. News 10 is live in Longport. Take a look at this angry surf. People there dealing right now with high waves, strong winds, and falling rain. It's a classic nor'easter which could cause severe flooding and even more beach erosion down the shore. Now, a few miles north in neighboring Vintner, city officials spent the day building a new sand wall to hold back the raging waters. Last week's nor'easter knocked through the barricades, causing some serious flooding there.
You know, it seems like every week now we're getting hit by one of these storms that are doing damage to the coastal properties.
Yeah, some real serious damage done last week. John Bolaris has the details from Earthwatch. What can folks expect this week, John?
Yeah, let's clear up the confusion with this storm. This one, again, is mainly like last week, the coast will bear the brunt of this one. As far as the snow and the ice, that is not the main concern. The main concern is, once again, down the shore. Let's check it out for you. Go through it step by step. And there's the very latest radar. Now, you can see some heavy rain bands just beginning to move into Cape May County near Wildwood right there. Wildwood winds gusting over the past hour or two to 45, and the winds will be increasing tonight as the storm system continues to creep very slowly up the coast. Everywhere else, the rain will become more steady within the next 2 or 3 hours. The heaviest rain, though, will be felt across southern Jersey and most of Delaware. What can we expect down the shore? Not good news at all. Moderate to perhaps severe coastal flooding will take place. They had one high tide this afternoon. It rolled in about 2 to 3 feet above the norm. We're anticipating perhaps late tonight that the tides will be running 3.5 to 4.5 feet above normal. Winds gusting 50 to 60 miles per hour late tonight. That would be down the shore, and that would be overnight and towards morning. And there you go. The tides running 3.5 to 4.5 feet above. Major beach erosion, and southern Jersey, Delaware, you'll be getting most of the rain. The flooding rains will be felt down there. I'll have more on the storm, what it means for the rest of us in just a little bit. Renee?
All right, John, we will check back with you shortly. Well, right now we're going to go to where the worst of this storm is heading down the shore.
That'll be where News 10 New Jersey correspondent Terry Ruggles is, live in Longport. Terry.
Oh, and as John is talking about the wind, it did pick up here in the south end of Atlantic County. Watch this, Larry. I can literally lean backwards like this into the wind. There we go. It's coming in gusts 30, 40 miles an hour. It is really, really something. Take a look at this churning sea behind me here. It is angry. It is powerful. It is cold. It is not a beach day at the Jersey Shore. That is for sure. People down here are taking precautions for this one. It's an angry sea. Strong winds give it the muscle to batter bulkheads and eat beaches with each pounding wave.
We're asking people to leave voluntarily, only because if they're here, if their electric goes out, they have no heat. God forbid if there's a fire or something, it's going to take time to get to them. So it's just going to be a struggle, and they're better off if they just leave it.
Police Chief Al Fox wants people to leave West Wildwood because this storm is expected to be worse than last week's, and that inundated his town. So last week it was clear up to here.
Oh, yeah, it was over this deck.
The water from last week's storm is still in Jerry McGovern's living room carpet, so he's getting out. Are you going to take these out?
They're already wet. They're soaked, so they're no good. And the water that comes up is salt water, so you can't save it because it'll stink so bad from the salt water. You know,
so you know you're going to lose all this furniture.
Yeah.
We'll be darned.
And it happened, this is like the 5th time, so this will be number 6 if it hits today.
Well, it's hitting today, and as John said, it's going to continue into tomorrow. And Pat LaRosa, the emergency management director down in Sea City, tells me the one that they're worried about the most, the tide that is the one that's 24 hours from this afternoon, that 3rd tide during the storm. That 3rd high tide, simply because on the back bays in a lot of areas, the wind is blowing so hard that the water won't be able to escape in between tides. So tomorrow they expect the flooding to be worse than today in a lot of shore communities. Do you have to leave? Well, absolutely not if you're high and dry and have taken the proper precautions. But if you're in a low-lying area and if water usually gets into your place, chances are real good it's going to get in again. Reporting live from Longport, Terry Ruggles, News 10.
All right, Terry.
In Atlantic City, all schools will be closed tomorrow because of the flooding dangers from that big nor'easter. And News 10's Christine Perez reports students were sent home early today as the weather grew worse.
Schools in Atlantic City let out early today, and folks who live in the Back Bay area of neighboring Ventnor spent the day preparing for tonight's nor'easter, expected to be one of the worst storms to hit the area in 6 years.
We're pretty used to it down here, living at the seashore. We just take precautions and make sure everything's tied down. We're not going to leave. We're just going to stick it out and hang here.
I'll keep an eye on it. Absolutely, Phil.
While residents on Edgewater Avenue are used to Mother Nature's destruction, they're not taking any chances, especially after last week's nor'easter.
We had about 2.5 feet of water in the street. There was a pretty good current going down the street, and it lasted about 4 or 5 hours until the tide changed and the water went out.
Last week's nor'easter hit Ventnor pretty hard, washing this access road to the beach and about 4 feet of sand.
There was a lot of sand was gone. And if this storm is as bad as last week, we could lose the remaining dunes and maybe have some boardwalk damage.
Emergency management officials have been using heavy equipment to build up the dunes and to protect what's left of the access road. But with winds expected to gust at around 60 miles an hour tonight, there is little hope the sand will stand up to the powerful seawater. In Ventnor, Christine Perez, News 10.
All right, in this program note, we want to keep you up to date on the storm, so News 10 today will begin a half an hour early tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Be sure to tune in for the very latest from Earthwatch as the worst of the nor'easter hits the area.
And this same big storm has clobbered the East Coast as it moves northward. It's bringing pounding surf to North Carolina's Outer Banks. 5-foot waves crashed on the shore with reports of some up to 16 feet high. Residents there are comparing these stormy conditions to that of a tropical storm. Sand dunes and beachfront homes that took a hit from last week's storm are once again in danger. In West Virginia, they're digging out from nearly a half a foot of snow. This is part of the same system bringing us our nasty weather. The mountains of West Virginia are under a heavy snow warning today. There are also some scattered power outages, keeping work crews busy. Residents say, though, it is nothing like last week's storm, which dumped more than 3 feet of snow in some parts of West Virginia.
And for not only our western storm, but all the way back over to the big low off the Carolina coast. Well, that low is going to start cranking up and begin to move offshore. Right now, early this evening, we're looking at the low in eastern North Carolina. And I know the areas of eastern North Carolina which have been flooded, sort of reminiscent of maybe Bertha or Fran. Not that high, but it did still cause some problems. Your wind will start changing over tonight back to that west-northwesterly direction, and that pushes the water out of the rivers back over toward the sounds again. Back into Kentucky, Ohio, maybe North Georgia, additional snow, and the snow and sleet coming down across southern New England with the very gusty winds on the coast with the possibility of some coastal flooding. Checking the latest forecast into tomorrow morning, the low off the Virginia Capes and moving away. We're not looking for one straight up the coast, but this one should make its way a little bit farther to the east, but the winds will be very gusty and the rain will come down quite heavily. Meanwhile, our storm in New Mexico tomorrow bringing snow to the Texas Panhandle, rain farther to the south, San Antonio, maybe over to around Houston. And what do we have here? Another California storm rolling on in. Some of the snow mounts still quite heavy with rain coming on down to Baltimore and D.C. Extra problems for the rush hour this afternoon. This is the way the lows are shaping up for tonight. We have some 30s. We have snow coming on down parts of I-40 today, for instance, clogged up with cars backed up on the snow up at the Cumberland Plateau. Meanwhile, in the west, we have our storm stretching from New Mexico to Washington State. The big story today is our mid-Atlantic bomb here, or the storm developing off the coast, heading up the coast, then out the sea. Something very similar to the storm last week. Some very gusty winds, upwards of 50 to some cases over 60 miles per hour.
Special edition of WeatherScope.
Welcome to this special edition of WeatherScope. I'm Dan Atkinson. This afternoon we're watching a powerful nor'easter barrel up the eastern seaboard. This storm is battering the mid-Atlantic states with torrential rain, strong winds, coastal flooding is a threat, and as well as that, heavy snows inland. Let's take a look at the result of this storm as it makes its slow progress up the eastern seaboard. Marine warnings are in effect over the entire, gale warnings are up and down the entire Atlantic seaboard, and in a couple of places storm warnings, as you see, around Cape Cod as well as the Jersey Shore. Heavy surf advisories posted from the North Carolina-Virginia border up to Fenwick Island, Delaware, as the incoming wind creates strong waves along that region, and also coastal flood warnings posted from Sandy Hook, New Jersey, down to Little River Inlet, North Carolina. Also the west coast of Florida having some flooding problems there. Here's one look at radar, which shows a broad area of precipitation, snow through much of the Ohio Valley, light to moderate rain falling through much of the Carolinas on up into Virginia. Columbia, South Carolina reporting some moderate rain this hour, and during the past hour, Evansville, Indiana has had some heavy snow. When this system came through earlier, about 12 to 18 hours ago, northwest Georgia got some snow from the storm. It got a dumping of snow, and the Weather Channel radio meteorologist Mike Phelps captured these shots on his way into work this morning. He was in Varnell, Georgia, just southeast of Chattanooga. Mike captured the winter wonderland aspect of the storm, but for some, including motorists in the southern Appalachians, the snow made for a real mess. Also, the system brought you very rough weather in Virginia Beach this morning. Strong winds produced rough seas and high waves. Gusts to 50 miles per hour were reported in the area. In addition, you were hit with lots of rain, heavy at times. Rain will taper off this afternoon, but winds will remain gusty. And as this storm makes its way on up the eastern seaboard, it is making its way ever so close to the Jersey Shore, where Lori Gary is standing by at Seabright on the Jersey Shore. Lori, how's it going there now?
Well, it seems, Dan, every time we talk to you, the winds blow a little harder. The rains have really just started in the last half hour, and the seas as well are getting pretty rough. They're about 1.5 feet above normal. The tides are coming in 1.5 feet above normal, expected to be anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 feet above normal. The real test will be high tide. That's at 2 a.m. And back in 1992, The Army Corps of Engineers rebuilt the seawall, and since then, police tell us the ocean has not come over that. So that's the real test. We'll have to wait and see if that happens later on tonight and into early tomorrow morning. Right now, these rains and heavy winds, just an inkling of what's to come later on today. Back to you in the Forecast Center.
Thanks, Lori. A little bit down the coast from you at Atlantic City, winds are gusting to 40 miles per hour, so you do have some more wind to deal with. We'll check back with you. And we are joined here in the Forecast Center by Weather Channel meteorologist Colin Marquis. And Colin, we are going to take a look at a satellite view and show us where the storm is. And, you know, this is the second mid-Atlantic storm in as many weeks. Is this one going to follow the same path as the one before?
It's actually going to follow a very similar track, same intensity, but it's moving a little bit more slowly. So the effects of this storm will actually linger in most areas a bit longer than the one last go around.
Oh, too bad.
That's right. So actually, on the satellite picture, an interesting phenomenon here. Notice some of the cloud elements across the central Appalachians heading west, and some of the cloud elements along the east coast heading sort of north. And in the middle there, that's an area of what we call divergence, basically over the New York City and New Jersey and northern mid-Atlantic coast, and that promotes vigorous uplift in the atmosphere. And therefore, when we have uplift, you oftentimes get a lot of clouds and heavy rain. In this case, that's certainly holding true across those areas.
And as we take a look at the actual surface map, the low itself is still well down to the south of this precipitation area, isn't it?
In fact, it's over southeastern portions of North Carolina, but the effects of this storm are far-reaching, still well down to the south, but as you mentioned at the top, winds gusting about 40 miles an hour on the south coast of Jersey, up about 35 miles an hour toward New York City. And because this is such a slow mover, and we're already seeing heavy winds up here, we have many, many hours to sit through, Dan.
Well, along with those heavy winds, the temperatures are they're not downright cold. Fortunately, this is going to be primarily a rain event in these coastal areas, but New York now 42.
That's right. Along the coast, because we do have the strong onshore flow, and the Atlantic is still relatively warm, temperatures mainly in the 40s, low 40s. So Boston down New York City does look like mainly a rain event, but not too far inland. We are going to be talking about a mixed bag of snow and sleet mixing in with that rain.
And a quick look at the wind chills. You do have a wind chill of 18 in New York. So the strong winds are certainly having an impact on how the weather feels if you have to be outdoors. Can you give us some idea here, Colin, as to where the rain ends and the snow begins?
Very difficult to pinpoint that, actually, Dan. It is somewhat west of Philadelphia. I know that State College and Johnstown are snowing, but there's such a mixture or patchwork of snow and rain. That's a rough estimate of where the rain-snow line is. Of course, in the higher elevations, it's also snow. But across much of the upper Ohio Valley, it is mainly snow, patchy snow across Pennsylvania and the northern Appalachians, and mainly rain, particularly for the big cities, Washington up through Philadelphia, and now just approaching.
From some school children in southern Jersey as they boarded